Listen. Short story long.
Welcome.
It could take your whole life.
Preach.
Develop clarity.
Second, patience.
If it scared you, you should probably do it.
Whatever you think you don't have, you have something else in its place.
Listen. Short story long.
Go, Woody, go.
Preach.
Listen.
Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am joined today by an entrepreneur in an industry that I have never learned about or had a conversation about. And that to me is absolutely fascinating. So Justin Ross, thank you for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming and offering sort of your knowledge and your story and being so, you sent me a box of your product and it's in my office still, which I probably shouldn't have it there.
It'll be gone soon, probably.
It'll be,
Judging from
if anyone
your staff.
sees what's in there, yeah.
Exactly.
So you're in the sex toy business.
That's right.
Is that an accurate?
Sexual health and well-being.
There we
is
go. I
the
knew there was a
correct
better
category.
I can tell by your vibe, like you're not, you're obviously not like a crazy sex toy dude. Sexual health and well-being fits your look a lot better.
Right. It's a definitely a different industry. I didn't anticipate myself ending up in this industry.
Yeah.
Just sort of happened. Just to give you some background, how it came about. I know a lot
Well,
of
let's
people.
start from the super beginning because I want to kind of understand, like I said, I mean, for the listener who can't see, Justin does not look like some crazy, he's a very healthy looking, well put together businessman type.
Thank you.
And I just want to know how you kind of get there. So from the very beginning, can you just give me a little bit of like childhood and where you grew up and
Sure.
what all that was like?
Yeah, I grew up in LA and moved to Beverly Hills when I was 7 years old. My dad was an attorney, and he had a landmark case with the NBA and overturned the rule where they said athletes couldn't play in the NBA before they're 21.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a whirlwind when I was a kid. I was growing up around world-class and really famous people and athletes and entertainers, and that was really kind of a neat thing for me.
Can I ask you a little bit about that case?
Yeah, sure.
Because was that case like, was that a life changer for him?
Absolutely, yeah. My dad comes from a family of 5 kids, grew up in the projects in New York, fought his way out of the streets, got a scholarship to play Michigan State basketball.
Yeah.
And basketball was his life. He came out to try out with the Lakers, I think in 1960, and didn't make it. He was playing behind Jerry West.
Yeah.
And started teaching delinquent kids in Saugus for a few years and went to law school at night. And when he graduated, there was a phenom named Spencer Haywood playing in the ABA. There were 2 leagues. There was the NBA and the ABA.
Okay.
And this guy was 19 years old, scoring 50 a game. And a rogue owner in the NBA came to him and said, "I want that player." Well, the NBA had a rule back then that said you couldn't play in the NBA before your graduating class. And they fought that all the way to the Supreme Court, overturned that rule, and every player that leaves school early or comes out of high school uses it. It's called the hardship clause.
That's amazing. And what now it's 18 years old, or what's the?
Yeah, I think so now. It's
Got it.
18.
Gosh, and then that just opened the floodgates for, did everyone instantly, back when that happened, was there like a bunch of players that followed right away?
A bunch of players. Well, Moses Malone was one of them, and Spencer Haywood was the landmark case, and then Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett,
amazing.
Magic Johnson. They all left school early using that case.
Yeah. And then you said that when, we talked a little bit before we started recording, I'm from Akron, Ohio. You visited there once.
Right.
To go visit LeBron when he was in high school to potentially do some business.
Right. Well, I played in college. I played basketball at UC Irvine, and then tried out for a team in Italy after I graduated. So I stayed over there for a little bit. And then I came back. I worked for a few years and went back to business school. My last year in business school, I was sort of floating around, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in finance before. I was in investment banking. And I told my dad, hey, there's this phenom in Akron. Let's go see him.
Yeah.
So we got in touch with his mother, Gloria, and we got on a plane and we met with the family and we went to a game and watched him play.
Yeah.
And there were 15 other agents there, and these guys are getting taken care of from the time they're 13 years old. And he looked at me and he said, "My advice to you is," because he had horses too, "don't get involved with anything that eats or talks back when you're looking at business."
That's what your dad said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, "You got to really want to do it." And I really didn't want to do it. I was just doing it because I wanted to follow in his footsteps and I thought it'd be cool and all that stuff. And it wasn't really my passion. So we came back from that and I got a job in New York at a huge hedge fund, $40 billion fund at a business school. And I went out there for a couple of years and then I really hated it. Yeah. And I always say, businesses are started for one of two reasons, either inspiration or desperation.
Yep.
And when I was in business school, I was a real square peg kind of guy. I was an athlete. I wasn't drinking. I mean, I smoked pot and stuff like that. But I had this girlfriend who was gorgeous, and she took me into a store that was an adult toy shop at the time, and they mostly videos. And we went in the back and we bought this ring with a bullet in it and a cord, and we tried it, and it was like, her head almost spun off when we used it. I was like, what?
Like, wait a minute.
What's going on here?
There's
right?
something here.
Yeah. And so I didn't really think of anything. And I graduated school. I went to New York, and then after a couple of years, I left. I had enough of Wall Street, and I had enough of the grind of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I made a ton of money doing it. And I said, I'm going to take 2 weeks off, and I'm going to travel through Europe again. And 2 weeks turned into 6 months, and it was sort of a vision quest. And I ended up in Brazil. I ended up all over Europe, Asia, and
So you had no idea what you wanted to do or what you were just trying to...
No idea. I mean, I ended up, a friend of mine was a movie producer and writer, and he was doing a movie called Goal at the time. It was a soccer movie. Yeah. And I went and visited him in England, Newcastle, and I hit it off with the owners of the team from Newcastle. They were just wrapping the film, and they had this concept to go down to Brazil and invest in all these soccer clubs in Brazil. And they said, "Will you be our liaison?" I said, "Sure, I'm not doing anything else."
Yeah.
So I went to Brazil for 6 months, and I set up all these foreign investments into teams for Newcastle.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with Brazil and the Brazilian people and the culture. But I always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I always wanted to do something on my own. And, I had ideas for water company and for stone company and furniture company, and there was a surfwear brand down there that I fell in love with that I was going to bring back. But they all had huge kind of barriers to entry or startup costs to get into them. So a friend of mine in Thailand said, "Hey, I saw these rings coming out of China, and they're disposable. They're vibrating rings." And it was sort of a light bulb moment went off. And I said, "Well, send me a couple of them." So I got a couple of them. They're really kind of crappy. They broke. They didn't last long. But the concept was to have a disposable vibrating ring or disposable sex toy.
Yep.
Something that you could have that was clean every time and that was inexpensive.
Yeah.
And, I got really lucky too, because at the time, the internet was just taking off with porn.
Mm-hmm.
So
what year are we? You know what? Can I do something dramatic here?
Sure.
Can I go back to the childhood part so that I can kind of understand how all of this evolved in your head?
Yeah.
Like, so when you're a kid and your dad wins this case, life changes. Do you remember feeling that, like the impact of that? Like, do you remember like life change? Do you remember like, oh wow?
Oh
Dad.
yeah. I remember being backstage. He had a band called the Silvers. They were like the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
And they performed with the Jackson 5 and all that stuff, and Tom Jones and Donna Summers and Joan Jett and all the rock stars. So I remember being backstage and looking at these costumes, and all the athletes would come over to our house and lay on the couch. I'd fight them for what cartoon you're going to watch.
Yeah.
And then Playboy was around, and my uncle was close with Hugh Hefner. So as I got older and into my teenage years, I got invited to some of those parties. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was
Man,
pretty
what
cool.
That's so cool. I feel like you probably have so many stories from like childhood. It just seems so different than, I grew up feeling like those things were all so far away, like on another planet. I can't imagine growing up around that stuff.
Yeah, it was really neat. I mean, I'm super proud of my dad. He's my hero. And I know it's not the normal story. I know that's not the normal path. He wanted me to be a lawyer, and I know this isn't the normal path that he that he thought I would take either. But
did you? So then, when you got to like high school time, were you just focused on sports during that phase, or
so I went to 4 different high schools.
how come?
So the first high school I went to was Beverly High.
Okay.
And my brother is 7 years younger than me, and he was getting picked on by bullies. So I went to his elementary school, and I bullied the bullies, basically. One of the bullies had an older brother who approached me in an assembly that we were having in high school and spit in my face, and I broke his nose, and I got kicked out of that school. So I finished...
Did the bullies stop picking on your little brother? Or
They stopped, right? They stopped real quick. Then I finished my sophomore year at Palisades High School, which was an LA City school, and I excelled at basketball. I was really a great swimmer when I was younger, and I wanted to be a swimmer, but my dad loved basketball and pushed me into basketball, and I excelled at that too. So I was on kind of probation there, but I was always an excellent math student. I always loved the numbers, and I loved being able to solve problems. So I let my teammates, because I was the new kid in school, cheat off me in algebra or whatever it was, and I got caught there, and I got kicked out of there. And then my parents had enough of that, so they sent me to a Catholic school, even though I'm Jewish. And we were number 5 in the country in basketball, and we had an amazing team, and I had an amazing coach, and that was an awesome experience. It was called St. Monica's in Santa Monica. Yeah. And my basketball game really went to the next level. Yeah. And 4 out of the 5 starters there went Division I, and I transferred my senior year down to Orange County because my dad was developing land down there and all that stuff. Do
you remember, did that have any effect on you, or do you think now it did, going to so many schools, or did you just adjust well, or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I graduated from college, I went to Europe. Yeah. And I played on the Italian team for 3 months, and then I traveled on my own for 3 months. So I was always all right being by myself. Yeah. And I loved meeting new people. I loved seeing different cultures, and I think that really helped me in the long run. That trip to Europe really kind of changed my life.
Yeah, that's so important. Would you say, do you think that it's important for young people to do something like that? I have a lot of discussions. I'll give you a little bit more background. I have a lot of discussions on here, obviously, about college and whether it's the right thing, the wrong thing, right for who, wrong for who. But one of my things that it seems like nobody disagrees with is you just got to go somewhere. You got to get out of your circle of home and go meet new people and different types of people and whatever. Do you agree with that because of that trip?
I think it depends on the person, and I think it depends on your mentality and what you want. But traveling, meeting new people, going to different high schools throws you into that mix and forces you to come out of your shell. And I'm probably a pretty shy guy, by nature, but all of that stuff is tremendous. So if you can travel, if you can get out of a small town, if you can come explore a big city, living in New York, even though after a year of working and grinding, I hated it and grinded it out another year. Yeah. That was a great experience. So everything, molds you, and we all end up where we are because of our journeys. Everybody has a different journey. So, and some people are simple and they just want to get married and have kids and stay in a small town and run a family business or whatever, and that's okay too. Yeah. It's just it's what your passion or what drives you, what pushes you. But I think absolutely, if you can explore the world and the universe and ask questions and find out who you are, that's invaluable in the long run.
So then, was your senior year in Orange County of high school?
My senior year was at Laguna Hills. Yep. So I came from the number 5 team in the country, basketball, going to a school where the competition wasn't that great, to be honest.
Did you just dominate?
Dominated.
So good.
Yeah, I dominated.
Had a fun senior year.
I think I averaged 25 points a game, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a great school and great people, and I met my best friend, who I'm still best friends with today,
Yeah.
the first day I got there, and that really kind of set the tone for the next thing for me, because I had always been in these hostile environments in
Yeah.
Los Angeles and growing up, and the Beverly Hills had a big clique kind of crew, and then Palisades was an LA City school, so you had a real diverse crew. But you go down to Orange County, it's clean, it's safe, it's like wow, okay, like people are nice.
Yeah, I see why people move there to like start families.
Exactly, it's
You
a good place to start a family.
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
crazy how close it is, but it is like another planet.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So then, when you went to college, where'd you go to college?
UC Irvine.
Got it.
And
And what was what was your plan in your head? Were you still pursuing basketball? Did you have sort of leanings towards business, or like what'd you go into it thinking?
Yeah, I was on the basketball team in college, and it was a really fun experience. I still remember waking up at 4 a.m. to get to practice and then sleeping before class, and I didn't really have any plans. To be
Yeah.
honest, I was an 18-year-old kid, and I was just going with the flow. And I think when you get into college, or you ask the question whether should you go to college or not.
Yeah.
In college and business school, I questioned what I was doing there.
Yep.
Because I wanted to get out there and kind of make my bones and get into the world. But I thought of dropping out a bunch of times. If I'm being honest, I'm glad I didn't, because it's something that I have and
Yeah.
I'll always have until I die. But looking back, do you need college? Do you need business school? I always say that people always ask me, what did you learn in business school that you apply? And the number one thing I learned was that if you get smart, hardworking people together, you can accomplish amazing things.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
They give you projects to do that are really complex and hard and that you can't really achieve in the short amount of time.
Yeah.
And then they move you on to the next one. But the people that you work with, they put you in groups. So that was really good for me, because I got to see really smart people, really hardworking people, and work on some cool things with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And then so when college was over, that's when you went and traveled.
So I went to law school for like a week. My sister was in Loyola Law School at the time. My other one was a lawyer also. She went to NYU. And I was like, this is horrible.
But just the whole environment, you just hated it?
It was so much reading and so much work and so boring. And, I just said, there's no way I can do this. My friend that I played ball with growing up called me from Italy and said, hey, I'm playing on this team over here in Bologna.
Yeah.
Why don't you come over and check it out? You can, try out with the team and maybe play on the team. And I'm there. Mom, Dad, I'm going.
And did they care? Were they mad?
No, they were really supportive of it.
That's good.
Yeah, my mom is an artist, so she's like, let him do his thing, and
Yeah.
she's great. So, I got over there, I played with the team and hung out for 3 months, like I said, and then that stint was over. I didn't make the team, and then I traveled.
And that's when Brazil and all that happened.
Brazil was many years later, after business school.
Oh, that was
Brazil,
after. Yeah. Okay. So take me through that. So then you come back here, and that's when you moved to New York and worked.
No. I came back here, and I moved back in with my folks.
Okay.
And I wanted to be in entertainment. I wanted to be a movie producer.
Okay.
And I started working in casting. So I interned at ABC, and my dad's first secretary was a woman named Sherry Lansing, who happened to be the president of Paramount Pictures at the time. So I worked in casting for a while, and then I got a job with a casting lady who did Breaking Bad and some of these other big shows, Walking Dead. And that was cool, and I really loved casting. And got into a weird situation with her where she was like hitting on me at work. I was a 22, 23-year-old kid.
Yeah.
This 50-year-old married woman.
Yeah,
and,
there you go. It goes both ways.
Yeah. So it got weird at work there. I left there, and I got a job with an editor through Sherry Lansing. The woman's name was Carol Littleton, who did E.T. So we worked on a big movie, which turned out to be a flop, but it had tons of stars. It had Reese Witherspoon and Gene Hackman and Liv Schreiber and all these like major stars, Paul Newman. And so I got to see the editing of that, and that was really cool because I got to sit in what's called dailies. So after they shoot, they go watch, and the stars would all come watch with you. Yeah. And then I worked really hard at that job, and there was no money in it, but I had fun, and I was
Yeah.
still young, and that was cool. And then after that, I got a job as a personal assistant for David Fincher, who's a huge director. And that was really neat because I got to hang out with him and Brad Pitt, and I was like, wow, this is like, now I'm starstruck. You know, this is Hollywood.
And was that still with the goal of maybe working in film? Like you're like, let me work under this guy and
Yeah, that
learn
was
some stuff?
that was the goal. I wanted to be a producer and getting close with some of the major talent, and that's kind of how it worked. And then my sister came to me, who's the lawyer from NYU,
Yeah.
and she said, hey, there's this little house in West Hollywood. Do you want to buy it with me? It was like $200,000.
Yeah.
I maybe had 70,000 or something saved at the time, and I was like, okay. And we bought it and we fixed it up, and I think we put 50 or 70,000 into it. We sold it 3-4 months later for almost 600,000.
Jesus.
And I was like, Jesus,
So now I want to be in real estate.
I want to be in real estate. Yeah, exactly. So I did that. I flipped homes for several years, and did some, and every time it got bigger and bigger, the projects.
Yeah.
And the last project was a big house on Alpine in Beverly Hills, and finished that. And then I was sitting at lunch with her one day, and this really wild Italian guy was sitting next to us. And he liked my sister and struck up a conversation and said, what do you do? And I said, I'm flipping homes with my sister. He said, no, you should be an investment banker. I'm an investment banker.
Based off what?
Based
just
off,
liked his
he
own
probably
life so
wanted
much?
a date with my sister.
yeah.
So he said, I work in Newport Beach. You know where that is? I said, yeah. I went to college at UC Irvine. He said, well, come down on Monday morning at 10 a.m. I got a job for you.
What the hell?
You'll be my assistant.
He must have really liked your sister.
He really loved her. Yeah. He was a really nice guy, and turned out to be just my mentor in the investment banking world. Yeah, his name was Tony Soich. He passed away. Rest in peace. But it was wild. I mean, I got down there and I didn't know anything about investment banking.
Yeah.
And he taught me the ropes, and we were doing something called PIPES at the time. And he sort of was a pioneer in this, and it stands for Private Investments in Public Equities.
Okay.
So publicly traded companies would come to the investment bank and say, we need money. And they would be like a real estate broker, go out and shop it to mutual funds or hedge funds. So that was really neat. And it was sort of a unique instrument in the investment banking world. It was a new thing.
Yeah.
And it was hot.
Yeah.
And I got to travel all over the United States with him, meet with all these companies, CEOs, CFOs. I got to learn the internal workings of all these companies and see, what was working, what wasn't working.
Yeah.
And just kind of sit on the sideline and watch and learn. So I absorbed all that.
Is that what you like? Like, is that what attracted you about it? Like, was it being able to see into companies and stuff like that you really like? What was the thing that made you think, oh, wow, I could be an investment banker?
I mean, if I'm being frank, I wanted to make money.
Yeah.
That was the driving goal, and that was why I went back to business school, because all the guys that were making $1 million plus a year were managing directors. They all had MBAs.
Yeah.
They all went to top schools. And
I guess why that as opposed to flipping more and bigger houses? Like, what it seemed you could make money quicker. What did you like? What attracted you more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was that. The guy that I worked for in New York was, I think I was 30 and he was 31 at the time, and he was making $15 million a year.
Yeah.
And to flip homes, it was, to do that, you have to put it out and get it back and put it out and get it back.
Yeah.
You can make great money, and it's a lot of fun, and there's the artistic portion of it, but it wasn't really that magnitude of money at the time. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And it was also exciting. I mean, I loved going into companies, and I think it's helped me in my business to see that what makes a great company.
Yeah.
And what makes a great company are the people.
Yeah.
And the people you work with. And that can also break a company. If you have bad people, it can go the opposite way.
And do you think you learned that during that time period? Like, when you were looking at all these companies, like, it's interesting to me through the lens of an investment banker to start digging into all these companies and see that the people are what make it great, as opposed to, well, the margins are what I mean?
Right, yeah, but the numbers are the numbers. So, we want to do the deal on the numbers, but I think subconsciously, I didn't know I was going to run my own business at the time, but I think subconsciously I learned what works and what doesn't work, and the culture and the atmosphere and the different people filling the right positions.
Yep.
So absolutely it helped me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then how did you go from Orange County to New York.
So one of the hedge funds that we used to work with, because the hedge funds are on the buy side, right? They would buy the deals,
Yeah.
and the investment banks would sell the deals.
Yeah.
So much like the brokers. And I hit it off with this young guy when he came in to do a deal with us, an Italian guy from Pennsylvania, super smart guy. And when I graduated from business school, I hit him up, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." And he said, "Absolutely, come on." And I went out there. I was a California guy.
Yeah.
I really hadn't lived anywhere else except for Europe for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, in November that I moved out.
Ugh.
And I was in a little studio apartment that had no heat. And I got my
It was
suit on.
$20,000 a month.
It was, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I took a shower. I went downstairs, and I couldn't catch a taxi. And it was freezing cold. And my hair was frozen. And my nose hairs were frozen. And I got to work, and it was like super hot inside the office. And I thought, what did I get myself into here?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm just going to, it was exciting though. You're young, and New York's an exciting city.
Yeah.
Both my parents are New Yorkers. So I had a lot of contacts out there for
Yeah.
where to go and what to do. And then as that grew and that business grew, it was really fun because, I was friends with my boss basically.
Yeah.
So we traveled.
That was the
around.
Italian guy.
That was the Italian guy. They were
Yeah.
both Italian guys.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a really neat time.
Yeah.
And the first year was really exciting, and I learned so much. And then the second year, I really learned the inner workings of how the world of finance works and how companies would be destroyed by what we were doing.
Yeah.
And, for profit,
Yeah.
for our profit.
Yeah.
And it sort of took a toll on me when I was sitting with an owner of a company one time, and he said, "Your company destroyed my company.
Yeah.
I've worked 17 years to build this thing, and you guys wiped me out in 6 months."
And for the listener, like, what does that mean?
So basically, when a company would come to us for money,
Mm-hmm.
they would be desperate for money.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran a model that would show when they were going to run out of money,
Yeah.
when they needed us. So we'd start contacting them a year or 6 months out and say, "Hey, this is what we do." And they say, no, we're not taking your money.
Yeah.
And then when they were desperate, a month left of cash, they'd come to us. So we'd give them the cash,
Yeah.
and we'd take their stock or debt at a discount.
Yeah.
So if the stock's trading at 10, we take it at 8.
Yeah.
And we'd have to hold it for 60 days. We couldn't trade it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we'd go to the options market, and we'd buy the put options on it.
Yeah.
And we'd corner the put options. So if the company didn't make it after 60 days, we'd dump the stock.
Yeah.
And the company's stock would go down in value, and we'd make tons of money on the put options. And for those that don't know what the put options are, it means you're betting the stock's going to go down.
Yeah.
So it's totally legal, but it's totally unethical, in my opinion.
How is that legal? Like when you put it when you condense it into that short form, it's like it just feels like such a industry of
Well,
scamming.
when I didn't know what was going on for the first year, and
Yeah.
I just thought, man, we're making so much money, and we're trading in and out of these positions. $1 million in one day we made,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is unbelievable. And when I finally figured out how we were doing it, I was like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't capitalism. This
Yeah.
is, we're just robbing.
Yeah.
We're robbing these desperate companies.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in all, fairness, the companies were desperate for money. So
Yeah.
they did need it, and some of them would make it, but a very few of them.
Yeah. And then let me ask you this, just because from my Akron, Ohio, no college education, like my entrance into entrepreneurship was very sort of scrappy and piece it together. I've always been sort of enamored by like the world of hedge fund and investment banker, and it all just feels so like legit to me. Like it feels like, man, those are like the real guys, right? This is how it feels. That's my weird perspective and story. But for that sake, like what is the life of how old were you when you were in New York doing that?
I think I was like 29, 30.
So a 30-year-old New York investment banker doing really well. Like what does it look like? You're in an office all day, I'm guessing, or no?
No, I mean, I wasn't a trader, so the traders have to get in there at 5 a.m. and they
Yeah.
got to trade in and out of the shares. I was more of the guy that would go out and meet with the companies. I'd go source where the deals were,
Yeah.
so I could work from anywhere. So
So cool.
I worked there we had a company house in San Diego and Encinitas on the beach.
Yeah.
So we'd come out here. Like I said, I was friends with the guy. So that was pretty neat. But yeah, I mean, I could see how you think that they're legitimate, and they are. I mean, it's the deals are pretty complex when you get into the structure of them.
Yeah.
Some of them, and you know, it's a really interesting business. But you know, it's entrepreneurship was drawing me more. I was driven more towards the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. It's cool, like really talking to someone who was truly on both sides of it, you know, because from my world, it's like even me and my peers, I think I know a lot of other people like me that have started businesses and tried to grow them. But even if you grow them and you hit the real target, you're going and talking to investment bankers, right? And you're going to try to go through that process. So it always just felt like this thing of like, man, I wonder, those guys are so much smarter and they're so much more, they know, you know what I mean?
Right,
and so it's
yeah.
interesting kind of hearing your perspective from a guy who really went the other way, you know, and
Right.
like was in that world and said, you know, I would rather look out for people and create something as opposed to that.
Right.
It's interesting, but I'm fascinated by it still. My favorite show is Billions. You watch Billions?
Yeah, I watch it.
Love it. Because I just think it's so cool.
It's neat. Yeah, definitely. And they're moving big money around, these
Yeah.
guys, and they have a lot of power, and
Yeah,
there's
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of
cool.
backdoor things going on though that the public doesn't know about.
for sure.
Yeah.
So then did you get, like, is it fair to say you got sort of burnt out of New York?
Yes.
And did you get burnt out of New York and your work and your type of work at the same time, or no?
Yes.
Got it.
And the people I was working with. I liked a few of them, but for the most part, my boss became a boss hole
Yeah.
and super greedy.
Yep.
And then when I figured out what was going on, it all became apparent as to what his motives were.
Yep.
And I just had enough. And we were partying. I got into things I shouldn't have been doing out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, it's all part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. So then was that like, okay, I'm over it, I got to pack up and move back to California?
Well, that's when I went to Europe
Oh, yep.
to see my friend
Man, I
with
keep
the.
messing that up.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I saw him with the movie, and then I ended up in Brazil, and then I was all over the world, and then the
Then you got
vibrating
the call.
the vibrating ring was the sort of the thing.
So when you got the call about the vibrating rings, did you have a flashback to your experience with the first sex toy and you're like, oh shit, that was something, or was that lingering in your brain, or?
Yeah, when I saw the concept for the disposable, I definitely flashed back.
Yeah.
It was immediate, and then I thought, okay, how do I do something with this?
So you had never looked into that industry or anything before?
Never even thought of the industry, and then, you know, when I got into it, it was really challenging at first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to deal with China, to try to develop stuff, to try to get things on time.
And let me ask you this too. Sorry, but so you get the ring, you're like, this could be something, this disposable thing, okay, I got it. I remember how great these things are. Was there a moment where you said, this is it, this is what I'm going to do?
Yes.
And what did that look like? Like, when did you decide, like, I'm going to commit my life to, you know, because did you have to call your parents? Like, what do you do?
So my parents had enough of me. They had enough of the traveling around. They had enough of me just, you know, going out every night with my buddies and
Yeah.
drinking. And I got on a plane and went to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big surf competition over there. I think it's called the Pipe Pro Classic or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And I went out to Pipeline on the North Shore of Hawaii. And I got to the beach early before it started. And I rolled a joint and I smoked out and I laid there and I fell asleep right near the tent where the surfers check in.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of those cameras back at the time where you would like roll it and click, those disposable cameras.
Mm-hmm.
And when I woke up, this guy was standing over me with a surfboard. And on the fin, it said Bushman.
Uh-huh.
And I just had this aha moment. And I said, Bushman Products is going to be the name of the company, and the Screaming O is going to be the name of the product.
Uh-huh.
And I came back and I ordered 1,000 rings. And they were pretty inexpensive at the time. And I hired a graphics guy. I hired an internet guy to build the site.
Uh-huh.
And it was amazing that screamingo.com was available. I
Yeah.
registered that. I trademarked it, copyright everything. And then I did field studies.
Mm-hmm.
My buddies and I would go out to the clubs like we were doing anyway. And
Yeah.
I'd go up to a group of girls and I'd say, hey girls, can I ask you a question? Would you try this with your husband or boyfriend? And they'd say, what is that? and I turn it on and they'd freak out and they'd call their friends over and they'd rip my pockets to get more.
Yeah.
And I was
Man,
like,
how
holy
did you
shit.
get the, like, this is what's crazy is you seem like a pretty shy, like reserved guy. I can't imagine. That's like a,
I used to be a wild man, but
Did you?
I am now. Yeah,
okay.
a little bit.
That's like a bet. Like if you, that's something I do with one of these guys. Like, hey, if you lose, you got to take this pocket of vibrating rings.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to hand them out to 10 random girls. You know,
Yeah,
like,
when I was your guys' age, I was wild.
Got it.
I'm 46 now.
God, so you've toned it down. So
I've toned it down a little bit.
And did you ever get any like? Did you ever get slapped in the face or any?
Never.
Never.
No, the reaction was always positive.
Yeah.
It was always crazy. I'd get people calling me up at 2 a.m. in the morning. Hey, man, I'm coming over. Do you have any more of those things?
Like a
And I
drug
was like,
dealer.
all right. Yeah, drug
You
addict.
got any more of those rings,
I
man?
need a fix. I need a fix. So
Yeah. We got them live.
there's my wingman Dan.
So this is the like sort of the
This is the original one.
is this the actual original model?
That's the one that I went over to China and rebuilt. So this is the upgraded from the
2.0.
original. Yeah.
Okay, so you're out handing them out.
People went crazy. I started business. I signed up for a trade show. Didn't know anything about setting up a trade show booth.
Yeah.
And did the trade show. Had decent reaction. Probably lost a few $1,000 on the trade show.
Yeah.
Did another trade show. Decent reaction. And the third trade show that we did was it was an interesting kind of concept for the adult toy market.
Yeah.
They did it where you would get 20-minute sessions with the top buyers
Yeah.
in a hotel room. Signed up for it. And this is when I'm questioning, what am I doing with my life? Everybody thinks I'm nuts.
Yeah.
My parents are like, what are you doing? My dad's like, I got an interview for you at Goldman Sachs. And I'm like, no. That's when the desperation set in. I'm like, I'm not going back. And by the third trade show, we wrote almost 100,000 in orders.
Wow.
And we signed up 27 out of the 32 top distributors in the United States for these type of products.
What changed?
I think it was just the concept
Yeah.
and getting in front of these people.
Yeah.
You could call people all the time and you can knock on their door and you can write them letters, but face-to-face is really powerful. And putting something in somebody's hand.
Yeah.
And I had 4 items at the time. There was a little bullet, there was, a little massager and this, and then variations on colors of this. And then, so we get back to I was working in a garage and guest house at the time.
Uh-huh.
My sister had moved to San Francisco. She let me rent her house and use the little garage and guest house as my office and warehouse. And I had about 5,000 or 10,000 in product sitting in a garage.
Jesus.
So I had to get on a plane to China and figure it out real quick. I call it the trip from hell. It was 12 days and 17 factories later.
Oh, yeah.
And each factory is a 3-4 hour drive from the other ones. And they're all smelly. And I wandered into this one factory and they were making watches, air purifiers, and dolls.
Uh-huh.
And I said, can you do this? And they said yes. And they had 40 employees at the time. And they did it. And we filled the orders, spent $20,000 to air freight to fill the orders.
Yeah.
And then it was off to the races. And then, the first year we did $1 million. And then just kept growing like wildfire. And my house was filled with boxes. I couldn't even get to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so I rented. This is the life of the entrepreneur. You
Yeah.
just do what it takes. I remember on the way over here eating Subway sandwich every day and putting everything into this. And
Yeah.
and I think my motivation at that time was to prove everyone wrong and to make my parents proud.
Yeah.
And to show them that this was actually a business.
Yeah.
And started renting storage units that were about half a mile away. And by the time I had 8 storage units filled, the storage unit place got mad with all the trucks coming in and out of there. Went down and got a 25,000 square foot warehouse and filled it up pretty quick. And now I think we're in 45 countries worldwide, and the market just keeps growing and the acceptance keeps growing, and it's been a wild ride for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. What so for a long time it was just you in a house and scrapping it together.
Yeah, I had a business partner that I brought in who helped me set up trade shows that I ended up buying out eventually.
Yeah.
And I think that was 2012-ish.
Yeah.
And so it was just the two of us running around.
And are those like trade shows? I guess my question is because my perception of that industry is that there's probably a lot of really weird shit going on. Like kind of like it's the similar way that I see like the cannabis industry. Like even though you see people cleaning it up and professionalizing it and stuff, there's still a lot of craziness in there.
Oh yeah.
Is that how it feels in your industry, or?
When I first started 14 years ago now,
Yeah.
almost 15 years ago, so the stores, remember, were predominantly porn.
Yeah.
They were selling 90% porn, 10% toys.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of weirdos at some of these shows.
Yeah.
And I remember coming back from some of these shows and just saying, I got to take a shower.
Yeah.
I
That's
just
how
felt
it
a
was.
film of
Yeah.
gunk all over me. And
Do you think that was one of your like advantages, was being such a like
yeah,
experienced, smart guy? And
I mean, I don't know. At the time, I just loved selling and I loved dealing, doing deals and dealing with people. And I thought that this product actually helped couples. And I still do think it helps couples achieve a level of intimacy that maybe they wouldn't
yeah.
experience otherwise.
And how do you, because I'm guessing that must be a huge part of your sort of initiative, is to get that message out and approach it from that angle. Like I said, I'm shocked at, just to be honest, I'm shocked at how you looked when I walked in the door. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't expecting like a circus freak, but I did, like you look like, you almost look like a retired hedge fund guy.
I hope I didn't disappoint you.
No, it was actually like, oh, this is interesting. That made it way more interesting.
Right.
And I think that that's what's going to be so cool about this interview is like this person who was super educated, was a hedge fund guy, was all this stuff, and now is in this industry. Because I think a lot of people would, at first glance of what the industry is, judge it, right?
Oh, definitely.
But what do you do to try to communicate that you're coming from a place of strengthening relationships and better intimacy with partners and not like wacko sex world stuff?
Well, again, when I started, it was sort of taboo still, and now I think the barriers have been broken down.
Yep.
Our products, or like products, are in every major big box retailer, from Walmart to Target to CVS to Rite Aid.
Yeah.
So, we get emails from people all the time that say, you've, really helped my husband and I that have been married for 25 years, and we have 4 kids, and we don't have much time to ourselves anymore, and your products have brought us together and,
Yeah.
Reinvigorated our sex life, which is an important component in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's the cool thing for me with this business, is that it does, everybody wins. We're not, it wasn't like the hedge fund where one side wins, one side loses. Yeah. We make money, our distributors make money, and the stores make money, and the consumers have a great time at an inexpensive price point where they can actually, not break the bank to try something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other cool thing is I get to deal with a lot of cool other entrepreneurs that are starting their business. Like I met a young man who reminded me a lot of myself when I was younger and starting out through this industry. He was working at a company called Fleshlight.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom and stepfather started the company, and he wanted to go off on his own and start a nutraceutical company selling vitamins and supplements. And he came to me and said, hey, I need some money and I need some mentorship. And I said, you got it. I'm with you. And, he's blown up. His company's called On It now.
Yeah.
And his name's Aubrey. And
Yeah.
It's really been fun to watch that growth and invest in some other businesses and help some other people get started too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, he was on the podcast. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, he's a cool cat.
And what do you do to, you said that you learned in hedge fund world and investment banking the power of good people, of company culture, of whatever. How do you apply that now that that's all in your power to do all that?
Well, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Running a business is a work in progress, working with people. Everybody's has their own goals and their own visions of how they want their life, and it's finding the right people that not only fit in with the right work component of what you are looking for, but they also have the right cultural thing. Like, for example, my wingman, Dan, who's here with me today, I've known him since he's 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I met him on a beach.
Yep.
And I saw him in a restaurant years later after he graduated, and he came on, and I said, Dan, you're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to put you on the road merchandising. And he put 4,000 miles a month on his car merchandising, and showed that he really wanted it. And all the people that are in the company now are the same. They're all working towards a common goal, and that's I think that should be rewarded. And like I said, when it's not right, it sticks out pretty quickly, and you got to get rid of that quickly, and that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing, man. I've been doing my business for 10 years, and I think in the beginning it sort of naturally started out as feeling like a group of friends, as it always does. And then I think it kind of progressed into, you have to hire outside people, and then some of the original people leave. And so now it's very much in the place where, you're hiring and firing through kind of the normal ways, but you're trying through all of that to find the right people, bring them in. And then you're right, like someone shows that they're not a match,
Right.
but they're already here.
Right.
So you got to figure out how to deal with that while, and I do think it's important. But I will say, for me as a sort of a young entrepreneur, it's good to hear that people, the game is people,
Yeah, for sure.
And
And
because sometimes you can get like, I'll go home and be like, it's not even, let's worry about the numbers. Screw all these people. I don't ever say that, guys. But you know what I mean? Like you think like, no, I must be wrong, because it is so difficult. You're dealing with personalities and stuff like that. And you just think,
Right.
no, I just need a bunch of college graduates to come in here and just,
I always tell people, especially ones that are starting businesses,
yeah,
to plan for success and plan for 10 years of working together
Yep.
with whoever it is, because that's the goal, right? You want
Yeah.
to be successful, you want to make money, you want to build something that's sustainable. And most people just get into business and they say, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money, or I'm going to do this real quick. It doesn't happen like that. You got to, build and build and build, and people are the building blocks of the business. And some come and some go, and some stay longer and some don't. And I say nothing's forever.
yeah,
Like I said, some people have their own goals, and I support that too.
Yeah.
And I'll help somebody that's dedicated and wants to do something else. I support that as well.
yeah. What about like if I'm listening to this and I think that this industry seems enticing? Any words of wisdom or caution?
It is a fun industry.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I got into it is because I saw low barriers to entry. Nobody was branding early on.
Yeah.
I don't think that they were running the operations side of the business as well as we do. We have an amazing operations guy with us now.
Yeah.
And, it's still relatively in its infancy.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more and more acceptable. So if it does intrigue you, then, do some research, go see a trade show.
Yeah.
Go, read up on the different companies in the industry and find out what the niche is, because, it's to get into a business just to be a Me Too company, it really doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if you have something unique and a unique idea, then go for it.
And what do you think that was for you? Like, what was that unique thing that really made you stand out?
I think it was the disposable aspect of the sex toys and the branding. Screaming O is a brand that people now recognize.
Yeah.
And I think it's a name that sticks out.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's the experience. I think brands are the experience, or it's something that people can look at and they get a feeling.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to educate people on, or to create that. That's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
So, like I said, nobody was really doing it when I got into it, and maybe only one or two other companies. So that's what really drew me to it.
Yeah. And where do you think it all goes from here? Like, where do you see yourself and the company in 10 years?
We see still massive growth.
Yeah.
I think probably 80 to 90% of people have not tried a sex toy.
Yeah.
And, once they do, then it doesn't become so scary.
Yeah.
And I want this to be the gateway product for that. And we're pushing into markets that I never would have dreamed of. We're going into, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Africa. We're in Nigeria now. I mean, everybody everywhere has sex, and that's how we're all here, right? So, we see this as really still a massive growth industry.
Yeah. Another thing that really seems unique about you is, like I said, you don't seem to have a big ego. You don't seem to need to be the man in every room. But from your story, it sounds like you were able to jump into pretty intimidating careers or job samples, however you want to call them. And it seems like from your story, you didn't have much of a problem kind of getting in there and owning it, from flipping houses and the people that you have to talk to and learning to deal and do those deals and get the loans and do everything, to investment banking, hedge fund, even basketball, going to play basketball in Italy. Is that something that you've ever noticed about yourself, or do you have any advice on someone who maybe, because I think one of the main things that holds people back is just feeling like they can't do it, or feeling like they don't belong, or feeling like, you know what I mean?
I mean, I always say every journey starts with a step,
Yeah.
right? You got to take a step. And the charisma, or whatever you call it, I think I got from my dad. Watching him, I call him the rainmaker.
Yeah.
And he would do deals out of nothing. And he still does. You know, he's in his 80s now, and he's still cranking away. And people love him, and they love being around him. And, you know, that really is what gets me going, is finding the opportunities and then figuring out how to work those opportunities. And that's part of the entrepreneurship, I think.
And when you go into, like, you know, you meet the guy that has the hedge fund in New York, and you go in there, like, are you walking in like, all right, let's do this, or are you more reserved and learning first, or what's your approach?
I was totally intimidated.
Really?
Yeah. In Orange County, I wasn't. It was a much more laid-back environment.
Yeah.
In New York, I was surrounded by people that went to Harvard and MIT and Yale, and they were doing things that I would look at and go, what am I doing here? This might as well be in Chinese.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. But again, I think my experience in business school, watching really smart, hardworking people figure things out, let me just sort of peel back the layers and say, okay, what are we trying to do here? And then approach it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really cool, man. Okay, here's the big, powerful ender questions.
Okay.
Number one, you can hop into the short story long time machine and go back to, I'll say, go back to high school. You're hopping around high schools, breaking bullies' noses, whatever. Well, if you could tell yourself anything looking back now, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, gosh. What would I tell myself? I guess, well, I was really wild back then.
Yeah.
So I guess I would tell myself, just calm it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But if I did calm down, I wouldn't be here today. So,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, it's all part of the journey, and everything happens for a reason, and, you know, good and bad.
Yeah.
You learn from things, and, you know, your failures teach you along the way
Yeah.
what you want and don't want.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd change much.
Yeah.
I'd probably be a swimmer instead of a basketball player.
Yeah.
So I really love swimming.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know, I don't know, just life, take it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Life's fun. Life's meant to be enjoyed. And, you know, enjoy people, surround yourself with great people. I mean, if I had to go back, I'd probably stay away from the bad people.
Yeah.
And you know, just focus on the really good people around you. And that's not easy to do. You know, that's part of the learning process.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last one is my new one. If you could prescribe anything that the entire world has to do for 30 days, what would it be?
Just be nice to one another.
Yep.
I
And
think.
try a screaming O-ring.
Try screaming over.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
come
part of it.
on.
But yeah, I think that, you know, people are, you know, genuinely nice. And if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. And, you know, spread love and happiness and kindness, and the world will be a better place.
Agreed. Where does everyone find you? Where do they find the products? Where do they find what's going on?
We're in most stores around the country and world.
Are these products? Is
online.
this in like CVS?
Yeah, they have rings in CVS.
Really?
And Rite Aid. We're Screaming O online, screamingo.com. Yeah, most adult novelty shops have Screaming O's.
Amazing. Okay, there it is, man. We did
Yeah,
it.
thanks.
Thank
That was
you so
fun.
much
yeah,
for
thanks
sharing.
for having me.
Guys, if you like that and you want to see more like it, as well as vlogs, other web series, and all the random stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button. You won't regret it, I promise.